Good morning, fellow fools. This is Joseph Toscano's budget reply for public interest before corporate interests. Now, Mr. Josh Frydenberg delivered his first and hopefully last budget of his career a few days ago, and I was fascinated. I call it the Goldfish Budget, because I don't think these people actually think we've actually got a memory that can actually remember. And there's a number of issues related to the budget which I'd like to discuss. The first thing is there are so-called tax cuts. Fascinating when you look about it. What's the tax cuts all about? It's about trying to bribe marginal two-income family votes in the marginal seats. That's all it's about. It's a bribe. It's nothing more than a bribe. And people don't understand that, a $10 a week tax cut is not going to cover increased costs for roads, public education, public health, public housing, healthcare, care of children. It's not going to cover that. All it's going to do is basically give you a bit of money in your pocket. And I've done my sums. If you get the top tax cut, you can actually have an extra smashed avocado plate a week. Beware, young people, beware. This man is trying to bribe you by giving you an extra smashed avocado. So the tax cut is just a ploy. It's got nothing to do with the economy of the country. Say, I'll give you $20 a week, you vote for me, thank you very much, but we're not going to tell you about all the damage we've done to the infrastructure of this country, all the damage we've done to public health, all the damage we've done to public education, public infrastructure. Because over the last 5 years, tons of money has been ripped out of these sectors. And for them to give a little bit back and say, hooray, hooray, look at me, look at me, look at me, I'm the world's greatest treasurer, I'm putting money into public education, so what? They're not putting money into public education, they're putting money into private education. There's 1/3 of kids go to private schools and about 2/3 go to public schools. So how are they going to fund it? An extra money for the private sector, less money per head for the number of students in the public sector. Then you actually look at their ability to so-called manage the economy. We're told that we're going to have a surplus. How do they get this surplus? Simple, luck. Currently, with the Brazilian iron ore disasters where hundreds of people died because of the lax standards regarding iron ore extraction, the Brazilian iron ore exports, who are our main competitors on the international scene, especially exports to China, have dropped by 25%. We have filled that void. And people say, isn't that wonderful? We've got increased tax receipts. But I think to myself, this is our iron ore, our coal, our diamonds, our gold. It's supposed to belong to the people of the country, obviously belong to the original inhabitants, the people of the country. Why do we have private companies making billions of dollars of profit, extracting minerals and coal from this country and exporting it on our behalf and then giving us a pittance in taxation revenue? Why don't we as a country actually finance mineral extraction, mineral production, coal production, and all the profit that is made goes back directly to the people? Why do we need this third tier where you've got private corporations dominate that marketplace? We do have the capital to develop these industries. Then you get on to the question of what else in the budget? Climate catastrophe, climate change. 2 tiny paragraphs in a 1,000-page document. It's as if it doesn't exist as far as these people is concerned. It's like me here, standing in the rain in Fitzroy, in front of this derelict building, and pretending the rain is not raining. I'm doing this for you. In the rain, I'm getting wet. It's the same concept. They think that if we ignore climate change, we ignore the potential climate catastrophe, that it'll all go away. But it's not going to go away. There was nothing in this budget regarding climate change. Jobs. Nothing in this budget regarding jobs. They said, we're going to put all this money back into TAFE. Well, they ripped the guts out of TAFE and privatised it. Now they're putting a little bit back in. For example, they said, we're going to support apprentices. Well, 6 years ago when this government was elected, there was 450,000 apprentices in this country. There are now 290,000 apprentices in this country. And that money that apprentices were given to buy tools has now become a loan, which you've got to repay to the tax department. So it's a tradies HECS. Not only do we have HECS for university students, but we now have HECS for tradies who are doing their, trying to learn a skill. So this is all about, it's about lies, it's about manipulation, it's about them thinking that if they wave a $20 note in front of us, that somehow we will forget all the things this government has done over the last 10 years to destroy the public sector, to destroy public education, to destroy public health. And what we need to understand is that the gap that will occur as a result of these changes, the gap that will occur between the rich and the poor is going to extend. And how about people on social security benefits? There are 35% of Australians rely on social security benefits to survive. Single parents, people on New Start allowance, old age people, elderly people, people with disabilities. That's approximately 8 million Australians on social security benefits. Most of the social security benefit payments are actually below the poverty line, which is about $450 a week. New Start allowance is the worst, which is about half what it should be to actually be up to the poverty line. Was there anything in the budget for these forgotten Australians? No. There's nothing in the budget for these forgotten Australians. Nothing at all. There was going to be a little bit of subsidy, a little bit of a cash subsidy given them to help with their electricity expenses. What a joke. The reason we have such high energy prices are because of this government's, at the state and the federal levels, privatisation agenda. Fancy privatising an essential service, giving it to the private sector, and then expecting that prices will stay low. Well, here we are. We thought we'd just walk around the corner because I was a bit concerned you'd be a bit depressed with all that bleakness that was behind us, because the budget was bleak. People think it's an important budget. It's not an important budget. It's forgotten already. It really didn't address any of the structural inequalities that occur in Australia. Didn't address the issues faced by social security beneficiaries. It didn't address the issues faced by the working poor. Didn't address the issues regarding wage growth. Didn't address the issue regarding the deteriorating public health and public education sector. Didn't address most issues. A little bit of money for infrastructure, a little bit of a bribe, tax bribe regarding tax cuts. And the beauty of it is now you can be an aspirational worker. Did you know that? In the good old days we had a stepped taxation system. With this new taxation system, if it's implemented, whether you earn $45,000 a year or $200,000 a year, your tax rate will be the same. And what does the government say? Well, you should aspire to getting a better paid job. How can you aspire to get a better paid job when there's no wage growth? So it's not all bleak. You know why it's not all bleak? Because ultimately your future depends on you. It doesn't depend on some old fool, standing in front of a nicely painted wall or some bars and a bleak surroundings. It really depends on you. But I'm on the way out. I'm elderly. I'm on the way out. I've seen most of it. I know the tricks. Unfortunately, most other people don't seem to know the tricks. This is a smoke and mirrors budget. It's not going to really change anything in this country. It's not going to address any of the major issues, including climate change, including inequality, including increased depression, anxiety. I'll give you an example. They're going to give you an extra $5 million to address indigenous youth suicide. And the key is over 4 years. That's right, over 4 years. Can you imagine that? Won't even pay for 3 psychiatrists a year. That's this budget's illusory. It's based on the fact that they don't think that we remember. We do remember. We know what's happened in this country. We've seen it deteriorate over the last 40 years. And we know that ultimately our political representatives, who are basically puppets to the corporate sector, they're not in a position to address these issues. The only people who are in a position to address these issues is you and me and other people around us, because it's mass protest, mass organisation, mass demand for change which leads to change. Look at Algeria, dictator for 40 years, thrown out over the last few days. Mass protests. Mass protests do work, and unfortunately Australians have forgotten that ultimate political authority in a democracy doesn't rest in the government of the day, doesn't rest in the bureaucracy, doesn't rest in the state apparatus, doesn't rest in the armed forces. Ultimate political authority rests in the hands of an active people. Not of people who wait for things to happen, but of people who demand that the things that are occurring in our society today we find totally unacceptable are addressed. So I encourage you to keep your faith in your ability as individuals and groups to make that leap forward and demand that change and be involved in long-term campaigns which will make that change a reality. If 300 years ago people didn't say slavery was unacceptable, some idiot in front of a colourful wall, it was actually a Quaker, said that slavery is unacceptable, we'd still have slavery today, although there is slavery in certain parts of the world, but it's not a major issue in most of the world. We still have slavery today. If people 120 years ago didn't demand the vote for women, there'd be no vote for women. If we didn't demand a social security system, there'd be no social security system. If we didn't demand a universal healthcare system, there wouldn't be a universal healthcare system. If we didn't demand marriage equality, there wouldn't be marriage equality. So it's a matter of pushing, shoving, and making our political representatives more fearful of us, the people they represent, than their corporate masters who are currently pulling the parliamentary strings. Next week, who knows where we will be. We'll be somewhere in Melbourne and we'll broadcast another YouTube presentation.